Comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Well, the top stories this hour, the Met Police has launched an investigation after receiving a number of sex offence allegations against the comedian Russell Brand. The force says the cases aren't recent and no arrests have been made. It follows an investigation by Channel 4's dispatches, The Times and The Sunday Times. The comedian denies all accusations against him. Thousands of passengers could have their flights cancelled or delayed after London Gatwick Airport introduced a temporary limit on flights. It's after an outbreak of coronavirus amongst air traffic control staff. There'll be a limit of 800 flights a day until this Sunday, which includes both departure and arrival flights. The army, which was on standby to help the Met Police, has been stood down. It's after a significant number of counter-terrorism firearms officers stepped back from their duties after a colleague was charged with murder over the shooting of Chris Cabba in South London last year. The force says enough officers have now returned to armed duties to meet their counter-terrorism responsibilities without military help. The Greater Manchester Mayor says the North shouldn't have to pay for the government's mismanagement of HS2. Rishi Sunak is refusing to guarantee that the Manchester leg of the line will be completed. A decision's expected to be announced before the Tory party conference next week. 1 million NHS appointments have been cancelled since December because of strikes in England. Last week's industrial action by junior doctors and consultants meant the country has reached the milestone now. Another double strike is scheduled for next week. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, has labelled it grim, saying medics have received a fair and reasonable pay rise. Now, prosecutors will decide later over whether or not to call for a retrial of Lucy Letby on 6 counts of attempted murder. The former nurse was jailed for life last month for the murder of 7 babies and the attempted murders of 6 others at a hospital in Chester in 2015 and 2016. However, jurors were unable to reach a verdict on 6 further counts of attempted murder in relation to 5 children. She denied the charges and has launched an appeal. Experts are warning the government won't meet its manifesto pledge to end homelessness by next year. The Kerslake Commission says there are chronic and unresolved issues in the housing system, with the crisis pushing more people onto the streets. The number of people sleeping rough last autumn was 25% higher than the same time 3 years ago. The government says it's spending £2 billion to end rough sleeping for good. And lastly, there's a high chance of seeing the Northern Lights if you live in Scotland over the coming nights. The chances of seeing the Aurora Borealis, as they're known, have increased, particularly in the north of the UK. It's because the nights are longer and because the sun is reaching the peak of its 11-year cycle, which means there's an increase in magnetic pressure fields on its surface. The Northern Lights have already been seen in Scotland and parts of northern England, including Yorkshire, but as far south as well as Herefordshire. Pictures on social media see wonderful colours in the sky, including reds, oranges, yellows and greens. You're with GB News across the UK, on TV, in your car, on digital radio, and now in your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners and your smart speakers tonight. Your first look at tomorrow's papers. I'm Simon Evans. Joining me tonight, two tried and tested headliner favourites, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. Good evening, gentlemen. You both well?
Yes, very
Matching
well.
jackets. Excellent. Perfect.
We always call each other before.
Yeah.
We say, what'll look lamest? And then we do that.
Well, I always say the more coordinated you are in your dress sense, the vivid the contrast of your political bigotries.
Bigotries? How dare you.
Opinions, whatever. Let's have a look at Tuesday's front pages. The Daily Mail kick us off. Suella, Channel migrants are not refugees, and Posh has been working out. The Guardian, shocking state of prisons means 1 in 10 should be closed down. The Eye has Labour to hit private schools with 20% VAT in their first year of winning power. The Financial Times, scrapping HS2 will hurt trust in UK, warn Birmingham City's US owners. The Times, PM is alarmed by the runaway cost of HS2. And Russell Brand there explaining his innocence. The Daily Star, rampant rabbits. That's actual rabbits. Those were your front pages. So we will start with the Daily Mail, Josh.
Yeah, well, there's this picture here of, it says, it's Posh and Pecs. Guess who's been pumping iron? And I'm thinking the answer is Posh.
But she kind of looks a little bit alarming there, doesn't she? Not just fit, but actually slightly masculine. Is that just me?
No, I'm seeing it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, masculine.
It says see page 3. What are we going to see on page 3? I thought they banned that.
I like the tensile strength that's been created across her bra cups by some sort of cantilevering.
That's right. That should be the title of your next show.
You know you're on telly right now. Sounds like how you say it in private.
Yes, absolutely. Still,
Simon talking dirty.
Yeah, there's a market for it. He used to work in porn.
She's gone for teal and orange, which does work. We know that as a colour combination. Do you know, there's a whole website dedicated to the use of teal and orange.
Oh, you're still running that site?
Yeah. Not in pornography, in mainstream movies.
We got far more out of that particular photo than I was expecting.
Let's have a quick chat about Suella.
All right. Suella, Channel migrants are not... They're not refugees. This is what she's saying. She's going to America, and this is what she's going to tell Washington. And she's talking about the UN 1951 Refugee Convention. And she's saying, whereas before you had to prove persecution, now you just suppose you have to prove discrimination, and being gay or a woman is not enough. But, of course, there are certain parts of the world where being a gay or a woman, Afghanistan or Nigeria, for the recent homosexual laws where the persecution...
We all know who's on the boats, though. Come on, Josh.
Well, yeah.
Let's be honest.
There are some people on the boats, absolutely, who are playing the system, and there are also other people, and the majority of people on the boats
We're not seeing
Afghanistan.
boatloads of gays and women rock up on the beach at Folkestone. Let's just treat our viewers with a smidgen of respect.
Absolutely, but there are... We're not just talking about boats, but we are talking... She's not just talking about the boats.
Okay.
She's talking about anybody claiming asylum asylum in this country, and the problem is we don't have official routes for
That's
those
not
women.
the only problem. But I think we'll see. I think we'll see, Nick, that she has a certain amount of sympathy in America because, of course, certain parts of America are suddenly getting flooded with refugees just lately, right?
Oh yeah, of course, and they've also got the Mexican border causing them so much trouble. Yeah,
but New York as well. The New York mayor is saying that New York will not be able to sustain itself, and will not be able to remain New York.
Yes,
much longer.
There was that amazing moment where DeSantis sent those people to Martha's Vineyard, wasn't there? That was hilarious. Yeah, I mean, look, Suella's calling it absurd and unsustainable. I think that's pretty fair. And she points out the vast majority have passed through multiple safe countries. I think there's also something in that. But it is a sort of another Suella screaming into the wind story. We do one of these every night. It's Suella says something has to happen, and it's not, is anything going to happen? That's usually the answer.
I'm afraid you're right. The Guardian, that will cheer us up, no doubt. Shocking state of prisons.
Yeah, so it's shocking state of prisons means 1 in 10 should be closed down. And it's Charlie Taylor, the Chief Inspector of Prisons, and he's saying about 14 Victorian jails are so poorly designed they should go. And there are some shocking stats. Wandsworth was built for around 1,000 prisoners. It has 600 too many. Pentonville, built for around 450, has about 1,200. Wow. And it might be, some people might say, well, why do we care? It's prisoners. But, of course, it's not ideal because, as he points out, most of them are going to get out at some point. You want them to have some sort of life in there, going to work, whatever it is, and so they have a better chance when they come out. We don't want to go full Norway, where they've all got PlayStations and ensuite bathrooms. But
you don't want to radicalise them, do you?
Right, and it's just like rats. It's overcrowding.
And I have to say as well, I haven't been in either of these places, but certainly Wandsworth and Pentonville are fairly expensive residential neighbourhoods now, and that some of those Victorian prisons could probably be quite profitably sold off.
I have been in both prisons, and can I say, it's a weird way you put it.
They're not so bad.
Yeah,
I got through it.
Get used to it.
Pete Doherty was in Pentonville for a while when I did live just round the corner. I used to walk past it every day. Caledonian Road, right?
You loser! Pete! Catch this, Pete!
Don't look back into the sun.
I'm surprised none of the prisons have the concrete problems, the aero... because I thought that would be a very short sequel to Shawshank Redemption.
Yes.
For 2 weeks with a spoon.
Just gouged through with their bare fists.
Get out, exactly. But this is the classic
they're all old, lovely brick buildings, aren't they?
Well, the inner city ones, they were built. But at the end, the government, so many of these articles where they're sort of identifying these problems within different parts of the system in the UK, not just prisons, but police or whatever it is. Yeah. And always at the end, there's a government spokesman say, well, we built one and we promised to build more and we're going to do more. And it's always just late.
I would have thought the obvious thing to do is build something along lines of the Nightingale hospitals, just like very temporary, and then just use manacles, because obviously the security systems won't be that good, but you just use the old ankle
from your private collection.
Yeah, absolutely. And gin taps, that sort of thing, and dogs.
They do claim they're going to have 8,000 prison places by May 25, and they're delivering 20,000 additional spaces. They make those claims at the end. I suppose in a culture where you've got increased crime, you're likely to also have dilapidated buildings. This is the problem. It's a declining culture.
It's all part of the spiralling decline. But I still say castration is an overlooked opportunity. Anyway,
moving on.
We have the Times next. Who's doing
I'm
that?
still
Josh,
stuck on the castration thing. I'm just thinking, what crime is that appropriate for?
It can be chemical. I mean, like what we do for the
nice. Have a nice day.
Wears off after a year or two. You can still have kids.
So, OK, so there are 3 stories here. One is police investigating multiple brand claims, and you've got Russell doing his hands in the air.
I thought you made, trading standards officers multiple times.
It's this big.
Awakening wonders.
And that's sort of ongoing, and I imagine it will be for a long time. We have time limit could shield armed officers from changes after revolt. You have 10% of armed officers at the moment basically going off duty and say they don't want to carry arms anymore because, rightly so, they're afraid of being sued. They're making the wrong call of being sued or after the fact. Yeah. So they're looking into ways that they could put these people at ease for the job they do. But the big one here is PR alarmed by runaway costs at HS2. Now, we have seen this before. It was meant to cost 30 billion. They said it would cost... Then they were like, but at the top end, it would be like 44 billion if everything went crazy. Now it turns out it's 100 billion. It's going to get us to Birmingham in more time than it takes now, and it's not going to go on to Manchester and Leeds and all the other things.
It's a catastrophe on every possible
absolutely. And basically what they're sort of saying is that the rail bosses in this, or the big, just were like, let's just give each other loads of money, let's make it too big to fail, and obviously now someone's actually looked at the books and said, this is mental.
And they have also done a great deal of ecological damage already. And I don't just mean like kind of, rare badgers, but I mean, they've just created huge, horrible scars across the countryside. I know people who live in various neighbourhoods. You might not feel a great deal of sympathy for them, nice middle-class neighbourhoods, but, just like horrible, like there's been meteor strikes or something,
Is rare badgers a tautology? Because every badger is rare, I think. Or is that the case? I don't know.
Depends how long you grill it for, I guess.
Worth asking. But the question is, do you want to pay potentially £100 billion for this? You might say it's silly to scrap it. The sunk cost fallacy is very strong. It's going to take a lot of guts to put this through, because all these Cameron wants it, Boris wants it, Osborne wants it. So to actually say, no, we've wasted enough on this and stop
I suppose the point is it like 100 billion is sunk and there's but another 10 billion and it'll all come good? I don't think that's where we're at, is it?
No, he's saying a potential future 100 billion. Though he is offering this underground rail station in Manchester to sort of, ease the...
I mean, we must have said this a million times before, but the obvious thing to do is make the trains more pleasant, more functional when you're on them. If you had really reliable Wi-Fi all the way, if you just even offered free tea and coffee, throughout the length of the train rather than just in first class, that kind of thing, I think most people wouldn't mind an extra 20 minutes on a train journey if they could know that they could get some work done, that kind of thing.
And if they were, and the efficiency and being on time and costing a reasonable amount.
I mean, some people will then say, well, that's part of what the tracks are doing. They are increasing the opportunity, they're making the trains more reliable because there won't be so much engineering work. But I don't know. Feels like they've really mucked that one up. Finally, we have the rampant rabbits, which I guess we just have to clarify.
Yes, we should clarify this. Rampant rabbits, and what it is, the RSPCA are at breaking point because people are dumping thousands of rabbits, mice and rats. It's like the kind of thing the Joker would do in a Batman movie, just dumping like thousands of rats on Gotham. But it's, of course, individual owners who basically, they're inexperienced, and so they're not used to the rigours of owning a hamster, so they're just dumping it willy-nilly on the RSPCA, and this is a big problem now.
I'm saying it's cost of living. That's the
cost of living, cost of hamsters.
But I mean, I know some people have a sentimental attachment to the idea of euthanising dogs, even though they haven't got an owner or whatever, but rabbits, surely there can't be any...
A sentimental attachment to the idea of euthanising the dogs? Do you mean of not euthanising them?
I mean, you've got... Well, I mean, some people don't like the idea that if a dog's in a shelter for 6 months, nobody wants it, they euthanise it, right? Some people feel sad about that. But the truth is, if nobody's going to miss the dog... I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be kind of unnecessarily callous.
Anytime you say anything about cats or dogs or killing them,
he's already advocated chemical castration.
Thing if anyone loves the dog. If anyone loves the dog, then the dog, I totally understand we try and save the dog. But if there's nobody who wants the dog...
You're asking a kind of philosophical question here. If the dog dies in the middle of a forest,
in this case,
I think it's still sad.
With the rabbits, and you've got a cost of living crisis, and they got a lot of rabbits...
Yeah,
yum,
exactly.
Yum.
Feed them to the dogs. Right.
Feed them.
That's it for part one. Coming up, we discuss child migrants, the Hollywood writers' strike, and Labour's stance on buy now, pay later. You won't want to miss that. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30am.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show, that's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon, Josh and Nick. So, Josh, we have a new law now that will attract more lone children, though the Times doesn't say whether that is a good thing or not.
Yeah, we'll just have to make our own assumptions
OK.
up. Migrant law will attract more lone children. This is because basically Home Office documents come out following the Illegal Migration Act, which came into law in July. And because children are allowed, basically adults who come in can be kicked out, but any children who come in, and they're basically saying that when they say may attract more lone children, what they really are sort of edging towards is more adults who would then say that they're a child is part of it.
OK.
You know, you've got people who are 19 and they just need to tear up their passports and say they're 17 or whatever.
Yeah, and they've seen a lot of hard times.
I'm 14 or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Like you have to have proof. And they're basically, there are loopholes here.
Complexion.
Yeah, well, any time that the government tries to close loopholes where it's people...
Remember, there was a Tory minister a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, when that was happening the first time. David Davis, was it? Was saying you could check their teeth like horses to see how old
like
they were.
rings around or whatever.
Yeah. Certain X-rays, people suggested there's all sorts of things.
Yeah, well, AI will tell you now, I'm sure. But, yeah.
But, yeah, the point is there's more loopholes. The great laws, and these are going to be one of the loopholes, or people are going to come over. And, of course, but if more children are coming over, I mean, these are some of the most desperate children.
Yes.
But
also possibly hard-working, you know, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, there's also worry that they'll abscond when they turn 18 to avoid removal because legislation enables them to be deployed as adults. So that's another worry. I like your AI idea, although ChatGPT is notoriously woke, isn't it? So it might just welcome all migrants.
I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that.
Yeah, it does a lot of that.
Nick, staying with the Times now, I've noticed the G is missing off staying, like staying alive, but I don't know if it's staying with the Times, staying with the Times, staying with the Times. If you want to get a payday loan, you better do it sharpish before Labour get elected.
Yes, a comedic tour de force of a story, this. Labour pledges action on buy now, pay later credit. So this one's about financial services regulation, guys. And basically, Labour want to bring in long overdue consumer protection. They're saying basically that people don't realise that it's not free money. Labour are the people that bought us the magic money tree, but they're saying that when people buy now, pay later, they don't realise they're taking on debt. So Labour wants to make it idiot-proof that you are, in fact, taking on debt. It's not magic money.
It's interesting, isn't it, about... Well, I think it's interesting about debt. There is a close correlation. Apparently, it is one of those things that correlates very closely with IQ. And it is something that intelligent people underestimate the capacity of unintelligent people to make bad decisions with money. And this is what is possibly the single greatest, like, downward spiral that you end up on, going down. If you're not intelligent, it's not that you're not capable of doing good work. There's lots of work that you can do for money, but you make bad decisions. You don't understand compound interest and things like this.
Once you get into those 25% interest rates and so on,
it mounts up incredibly quickly. And some people just literally, this might sound incredibly patronising, but I think you have to recognise there is a substantial section of society that doesn't recognise immediately what 3,500% annual interest now makes.
Perhaps your castration idea comes back in again.
Well, and there's a significant portion of society who are desperate as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that overweighs. They probably sense that things aren't ideal, but they think, I'll just do that. That'll be fine. But it won't be fine. It will absolutely not be fine. Okay. Debt is the great cancer of society, isn't it?
I don't even have a credit card for that reason.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that Sharia law, of course, which is now operational in large swathes of the United Kingdom, that is its fundamental difference. Is that the debt is simply
not allowed interest.
Usury is struck out. And I think when I say that, there are mortgages, but there's a different kind of arrangement which allows you to get a mortgage.
Cheat the system.
Yeah.
But it's like in Dubai when they had their financial crisis over there, and then people just jetted out.
Yeah.
Because if you're in debt, that's it. You're in prison.
The car parks were full of abandoned Mercedes.
Yeah, exactly. But this story is interesting because it's Labour who's going for this, and it's because they're very much trying to find anything that differentiates themselves from the Tories, and this is one way in which they've sort of found that's what we're going to hear and see lots of these kind of policies, which are basically anything to just distance themselves and create two parties.
Funny enough, I think that we've got one coming up which Rishi has identified, haven't we? I think in terms of jail sentences, but we'll come on to that. But I think you're right. There's going to be a lot more of that kind of sort of flag-waving type of policy,
Absolutely.
isn't there?
And I just realised I made it sound like I don't have the intelligence to look after a credit card based on what you said. I absolutely do. I just choose not to. Have debit only.
Josh, we go over to The Guardian, writing strike to end. That's it. In sympathy, I'm not going to add a joke to that.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Hollywood writers' strike, WGA reaches tentative deal to end 146-day strike. That's the second longest in Hollywood's history. And this is kind of proof that you need writers. Yeah. And, this idea that AI was going to come in and whatnot, it's not true. And, I mean, I'm sort of in two minds about this because partly I'm desperate for good TV shows. That sort of keeps me going. But at the same time, there was a point where you would hope that the TV was going to get so bad that our viewing figures were going to be able to pull in from that and people going to go...
I think as well, I mean, I would be interested to know. I am one of those people who's a little bit cynical about the late-night chat show content these days. It used to be good, the cast and stuff. Letterman was good. Nowadays, it feels a little bit more cookie-cutter. And I would be interested to see if you could say to AI, give me 20 minutes of material in the voice of Jimmy Kimmel on this subject, what would it come up with? I've got a feeling it wouldn't be too bad. I did a thing with our colleague Jonathan Cogan the other day, and we asked a chat bot to write a few routines in my voice, and I'm not like anything like. There's not as much content of mine online as there is of his. It was pretty good.
Yeah,
it was believable. You could have punched it up a bit. But
Simon, don't say too much. They might replace you with a bot.
But for films and TV shows and all the other stuff, original ideas.
No, I agree. I mean, Bill Maher, did it well. He was saying we're just going to have the chat, we won't do the monologue, and those things are well. I mean. We're on the cusp of something, aren't we? Go on.
The question is, do you sympathise with the actual strike? I mean, to me, people do take the bleep in these industries thinking it's not a proper job. There's that famous video, F you, pay me. So, of course, writers should be paid, and they honestly just want a living. But that said, there is too much regulation in Hollywood. There's these absurd diversity rules in the Oscars, and they are pumping out a load of rubbish. So that makes me have limited sympathy. There's also an irony about LA and Hollywood in general. It's the most aspirational, cutthroat, individualistic industry, and then they all vote Bernie and go on strike. I've always found that a strange paradox.
It's slightly similar to the stand-up thing, isn't it? Where other sort of stand-ups are pretty much uniformly left of centre, some of them quite hard left, and yet also absolutely, Thatcherite in their activities. We've never been able to form a union where there's no kind of collectivist action at all, and we are quite happy to, try and get the most money we can individually from our little sort of one-man operations, which I'm quite happy with that. I mean, it's not hypocrisy. It's just that, we are...
It is a bit.
It's a tiny bit. Telegraph now, Josh. Rishi has bad news. This is the story I was referring to for those who want to close prisons.
Yes, rapists will serve full prison sentences under new crime reforms. So the fact that so few rapes go to trial and so few, even less, are convicted, the ones who are convicted arguably should go to the full term. That's what they do.
But I think that will just be reflected in the sentences then, won't it?
Well, I can't know. We can't know because I haven't brought it in yet.
But I mean, I would guess if a judge thinks, OK, if I give him a 12-year sentence, he'll serve 6 and then be out.
Well, I mean, I guess one of the things that they're also talking about is minimum sentences, and certainly for things including murder, and, life means life and whatnot. Yeah. So it's this, the classic thing, tough on crime and all of that stuff. But at the same time, it's like this is part of. They're saying that now the British public are going to find out who the real Rishi is. Which is...
They've been using this let Rishi be Rishi thing, haven't they? Which is one of these old... Let Reagan be Reagan and let Bartlett be Bartlett from West Wing. And there is no Rishi. Rishi is
the real Rishi. I didn't know. It's not... You haven't seen the real Rishi yet?
No.
This is the real Rishi?
I'm not convinced there is such a thing. No. Absolutely. Yeah, the real Rishi sounds very silly, but this plan is obviously good because rape, a lot of rapes go unpunished and so on. The only danger, of course, is if you have someone like Andrew Malkinson. Did you look into his case? Yeah. He was in prison 17 years. He got an extra 10 years for insisting he didn't do it. Because he didn't, recent DNA evidence has proven him right. So, of course, if he was serving an extra... but that's happening already, so I don't know.
I don't know how it's going now, but with the DNA evidence, any new case, you would hope there would, if you were going to be given a long sentence now, DNA evidence would support it. Do you know what I mean? I think there were historical, cases where that wasn't available.
Yeah, exactly. There's the best segue, by the way, ever I've read in any article in the last 2 years. They're talking about the most horrific types of murder. We'll make sure they'll never walk free. Mr. Sunak also introduced delays to net zero targets. What are we doing?
Those are his twin planks. They don't have to be parallel. That's it for part 2. Coming up, Hollywood twits, eternal splits, Trowbridge, spats. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Today's showers ease overnight, clear spells to come, but further rain arrives during Tuesday. Some of that, once again, will be heavy with a strong breeze, but nothing compared to Agnes. Storm Agnes, named by the Met Office because of the risk of widespread disruption into Wednesday as that arrives. Before that, it will be a breezy night, but nothing out of the ordinary. Some clear spells, and the lightest winds will be towards the east and south of England. That's where we'll see some mist patches form by dawn. But patchy cloud elsewhere, and that breeze will keep temperatures in the double figures in many spots. First thing, we've got some showers moving into central southern England. They push into the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast by mid-morning. Perhaps the odd rumble of thunder associated with these. We've got a spell of more persistent rain moving through Northern Ireland into much of Scotland. To the south of that, showers into Wales and the southwest, but in between the showers, some sunshine, and the sun comes out once again in the southeast with temperatures here of 23 Celsius. Average temperatures towards the northwest, where it will stay windy with the risk of gales in the far north. Those winds ease by the start of Wednesday with some early morning sunshine for many. But Storm Agnes is winding itself up in the Atlantic, and that's going to bring a spell of wet and windy weather during Wednesday afternoon and evening. Risk of widespread gales, especially around Irish Sea coasts, where there's the chance of significant disruption on Wednesday afternoon and evening.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides
the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners for the second half. We have beefcake news now, Nick, and former Hercules actor Kevin Sorbo does not fancy Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah, it's interesting. Kevin Sorbo, who does do a lot of cool tweets and stuff, and he has branded Hollywood men bumbling idiots and claims feminists are forcing males to be wussies. We normalise androgyny and misunderstand masculinity, and that seems pretty fair to me. This is in a piece for Fox News. And, you know, the mainstream is starting to deal with masculinity now, the fact that we do hate masculinity in the culture. And I think we do have to address it. And he points out that you actually do get very buff sort of men in Hollywood, but they're not good men, which I thought was an interesting point.
Unless they're actual superheroes, of course.
They're superheroes who are buff, but are they really good? Yeah, they might be good in a Marvel sort of way, but do they, like, lead their family and things, is what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Are they a servant leader in the family and community, which is what he's talking about, a sort of Christian thing.
You don't get that kind of Clint Eastwood figure, do you?
Right.
Slightly anti-authoritarian.
Well, yeah, and our culture...
You know, has his own moral centre.
If you look at our culture, it struggles to differentiate between necessary violence and destructive violence. Take the recent incident with the police handing in their guns, because the culture doesn't respect the fact they need to sometimes use them. We saw the same with Daniel Penny. In America, we see the same with defund the police. So we don't respect masculinity. We don't understand it in this culture anymore. And the other side point here is that he's been cancelled and not given work for being a Christian and conservative, which of course is not surprising in Hollywood. You even had this thing, Friends of Abe, which is people who secretly were Republican and had to have a secret underground club about it. So that's the second strand of this.
He is properly vociferous and unmistakably hard right on. Well, not hard right, but yeah. He's sarcastic and vicious in his criticism of Biden.
He's a sort of James Woods,
but yeah, it's fine. Yeah, very similar. Well, you probably have a slightly different take on it.
No, I mean it's slightly strange how he's. First of all, he's a keen purveyor of Christian beliefs. I don't know how you purvey Christian beliefs, but anyway. But yeah, he said that he insisted feminists have won when men give in to their base desires such as drink, drugs, video games and porn. And it's true, I do all of those because I'm a feminist. So he's totally...
I guess what he's saying is that there is... I think probably a lot of people would agree by now that feminism or girl power, perhaps, like in Hollywood terms, has been in the ascendant for some time. Women roles in movies and so on are just straightforward, aspirational, they're strong, they have well-defined objectives and they pursue them single-mindedly. Men quite often are portrayed as slightly incompetent or... there's things, seesaws around. For decades, of course, women were essentially just eye candy and men were making all the big calls. We know about the, the Bechamel test. If you had two women who had a conversation in a movie about something other than the man, that was quite a rare thing, And so, I think it's probably, about time the pendulum starts swinging the other way.
That's a very sort of BBC opinion, Simon. Come on, masculinity is so under attack, and this is why we have people like Andrew Tate and all these people. And yeah, he makes the point about the bumbling father motif. Well, I think we need to support masculinity.
OK. This is why you started boxing.
Yeah.
Your hands hurt.
I'm in a lot of pain.
Independent now, Josh. Everyone's favourite multi-ethnic girl band have found something to fall out over. Well, it couldn't last forever.
Who actually... Boom! There's a very niche reference, Louise Redknapp shares support for trans community after quitting Eternal reunion after LGBT plus row. First of all, I just totally forgot that she was in Eternal.
Yeah.
And then I just remembered that there was a band called Eternal.
Absolutely.
You prefer her solo work?
Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, they said that 98% of her fans are gay men. They've done a poll. But the idea they're going, her fan base are 90, they've really figured this out scientifically. But yes, what's happened is there was going to be some reunion this year, and two of the members, I think, who are the sisters, have basically refused. This is interesting because it's the first time I've ever seen a cancellation go this way round.
Yeah.
They're saying they're cancelling performing at Pride events, because of now it's vocalised here as
right?
The two sisters allegiance with the trans community.
Yeah.
But what's happened within that? I know that there are lots of gay men and women who are actually very frustrated by what they see more as the takeover of the trans community and also what's called the queer community, which some people would argue is just actually a bunch of straight people with a bunch of, asexual and fetishes or ridiculous
so
stuff like that.
Louise is pro-LGB anti, and the rest of Eternal are like LGB without the T.
Except Kelly. So just, by the way, Josh, in terms of the allegiance thing, that's a very independent word. In the article I saw from the Mail, the sisters had said it was hijacked by the trans community, which is a more apt word. So, basically you've got the two sisters, Vernie and Esther, and Vernie is very smart. She's a lawyer, and they were famously Christian as well when they were around.
Right.
And so, whereas Kelly and Louise have gone the other way, and they've gone on they're pure pro-T, to the point where Louise posted this absurd photo of the Progress Pride flag, that ugly trans flag with a sort of always and forever with a heart, which is such an absurd situation that we're so deep in the culture war that a bubblegum pop band is at war over this, and you've got a sort of pop person like Louise posting essentially an ugly, grotesque flag that promotes the harm of women and children, which I think is so obscene.
But so you're saying within the other three, there's a schism as well, is there?
There's the two sisters who are Vernie and Esther. They were they were core of Eternal. The other two are Louise and Kelly, and they're on the other side, the pro-trans side. So they're never going to Tory, and they've lost a massive Tory. The thing is, there's some integrity here, because by Vernie doing this, they've lost a lot of Tory. They're not going to do the reunion tour, so they will have lost money,
so
because they care about this issue.
They have stood up for the, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah.
OK, Daily Mail now. Fish and chips are being used as bait to lure back home workers.
Classic. It's a classic. Employers offer free vegan meals and fish and chips to lure workers back to the office, as M&G boss orders staff back in 3 days a week, and study finds Gen Z lacks social skills to work in teams. So, Big Four accounting firm KPMG are doing this. I mean, they're trying to bring people in just like a few days. 4 days in a fortnight. It's absolutely pathetic. It says up to 4 days in a fortnight.
It's pitiful, isn't it?
Up to 4. We broke the country with lockdowns. We didn't know if it was going to be able to just switch it back on again.
No.
We can't. But apparently the lunches haven't necessarily drawn them back in, so it hasn't even necessarily worked. But it also says, interestingly, people who are in the office more, 4 days a week, make quicker decisions. And people who are 18 to 24 feel frequently lonely if they work fewer than 3 days. And the funny part is that Generation Z lack the social skill to work in teams and want to work on their own, and are just completely broken internet people.
But Generation Z, they're quite young still,
They
right?
are.
I mean, that's because we've moved on from millennials, so this is what, 19-year-olds almost?
1924, I think.
18 to 24.
So they may really quite literally have lost what should have been their socialising years to
They've lost bits of
lockdown.
their brain to the internet.
Yeah.
Well, this is what they're also saying is that, 2/3 of managers feel that Gen Z destroy team culture. Because you can imagine them coming in and not just not be able to sort of communicate well within that team environment or play well, but also probably some of their views, I imagine, are very sort of disruptive and like coming in with pronouns and all of
Well, you say that, but I think the millennials are quite pronoun. I believe Gen Z are quite reactionary again, aren't they?
The next one who's going to
is it?
Yeah.
Is there another one
I have
already?
a lad who works on my podcast, and he's very sort of politically engaged and has some more conservative Christian views, but he says his generation is ultra woke still. Gen Alpha is the hope.
I do
They sound pretty masculine.
It's weird though, isn't it? I mean, I think our jobs are obviously quite weird, but I did notice, when we had, I don't know if you did like some Zoom gigs. Mm-hmm. It was you noticed that it was quite easy for people to not pay attention. You know, you could have a few people on the screen that you were doing the gig to, and they would look at you for the first 10 minutes, and you noticed something had caught their eye, and they'd shuffle off. And the same thing in the other way around with the e-schooling as well that my children were doing. They found it much harder to all pay attention at the same time if they aren't part of a community that's paying attention. Now, I know that's a different dynamic in an office, but if you are in a room full of people that are all working at the same time, it sustains a kind of level of attention and commitment to what you're supposed to be doing.
My son had to be in uniform on Zoom, which was crazy. Yeah. But, by the way, Zoom are demanding that their workers go back 2 days a week.
Are they?
Fantastic.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the first one to do so was Musk, wasn't it? He wasn't having any of that, Elon Musk. And it's a bit like when people like Zuckerberg, refuse to give their kids Facebook. You kind of think, how it works. Anyway, Josh, The Telegraph and the government are neck and neck with climate change to end homelessness.
Yeah, Tory, is there a target that the Tories have met? This one's particularly damning, actually, because Tory target to end homelessness by next year will not be met, experts say. But this was in the 2019 manifesto, that they would eradicate homelessness by the next election. They haven't done it. It's actually worse than it ever was. When you throw in temporary accommodation, which is another form of homelessness, it's at record highs, with about 100,000 children living in temporary accommodation, 130,000, and it's pretty damning, especially as during COVID, one of the, you could say, silver linings was they actually did manage to kind of get.
Well, I was going to say, we said, I mean, just in terms of, it's a snapshot, so it doesn't, you know, it doesn't necessarily represent the entire problem, but it said a snapshot of a single night in autumn last year found just over 3,000 people sleeping rough. Which, I mean, for those 3,000 people, that's obviously, you know, tough, but that's not that many out of a population of 60 million. That feels to me like that would be the churn in almost any population, just of people who've fallen through the cracks of any system you create, unless you literally have teams going around with ambulances or something, gathering them up and putting them... I mean, it's obviously they've managed to house at least 3,000 migrants. I don't know, what, a month or something, and more than that, right? I think, I don't know how many they are at the moment. So it's not that they're not... They have the infrastructure. But the truth is, most of those people, I suspect, have, like, mental health problems or addictions or something that are causing them to, you know, like, not engage. Their gears won't mesh with the available systems that would get them out of that hole. Would you? I don't know.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, that's why it says 82% of people admit they wouldn't know what to do if someone's homeless, because there's multiple causes. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, the idea that you're going to end sleeping rough, it was always a big goal, because it's never been ended. It's never going to end.
They will always be with us.
Yeah.
That is part 3 done. Coming up, we've got Double S, Double A and Double D. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, Daily Mail now. Josh, my favourite story of the week, Justin Trudeau has egg on his face, which is an improvement, I suppose, for him.
It's not black. Yeah, exactly. Leader of Canada's House of Commons apologises for honouring Nazi. This is a ridiculous situation that has occurred. So Zelensky went over to Canada, got this standing ovation, and the House Speaker also said, hey, we've got someone here who's 98 years old and fought in World War II, whatever. They didn't know what...
For Ukraine, for Ukrainian
the Nazis, which, of course, buys into Russian propaganda about there being Nazis. And because Ukraine was one of the where some of the worst atrocities of the Holocaust happened. They call it like ground zero because a lot of methods that about, I think it's 1 million of the 6 million Jews who were killed, and it was done through shootings and stabbings and mass graves and whatnot, and with help of some of the local population. Certainly people who were part of the Ukraine independence movement who sided with the Nazis because they thought that they would be given their independence. And this is one of these people. Canada's got some problem. They let in about 500 of these people from these units, and there's been some statues. So this is a historical issue. It's been going over the last 50, 60 years and stuff that people have been aware of this. But the fact that this whole thing happened and this guy was invited into their...
Given a standing ovation in their parliament.
Absolutely competent.
And to be fair, he is, 98?
98, well...
I mean, it is the last chance that this could happen. They have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah.
Because serving Waffen-SS officers are pretty thin on the ground these days, I would think.
You can get them if you really try, if you're Trudeau. And let's be fair to Trudeau. When he called the truckers Nazis, we thought he was a bad guy. It turns out he just meant they deserved a standing ovation. We've misjudged him. He loves Nazis. Yeah, it's shocking because Trudeau should have known. Other people couldn't have necessarily known. There was a long thread on this and from his rival. And yeah, he could have known about it. He should have known about it. So it's absolutely shocking. And yeah, the fact they didn't check which side or couldn't work out which side. Guys, we were actually allies with Russia.
He was fighting Stalin during the Second World War. That should have, just somebody's spidey senses
should have cleared. I know these people are idiots.
However sensible it seems now.
It's not surprising from Trudeau. He has praised China's basic dictatorship. And also, isn't it sort of the final logic of woke to be calling you a Nazi while literally applauding Nazis?
It is interesting, though, I suppose, with treading very delicately, but it does illuminate the degree to which the politics of that part of the world are always slightly more complicated than they become once there has been a war of aggression launched by a certain side. Putin unambiguously invaded Ukraine, and it is quite right and proper that we allow them to defend it. But then the deep history of it is always more complicated, right? I mean, you just see that. You immediately understand that, and you understand that the Second World War was on that front was not between right and wrong.
Yeah, well, it was
two versions of wrong.
They're so used to their year zero thinking. Probably the idea that we were once allies with Russia is very hard for them to comprehend.
Yeah,
but of course we were. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anyway. It's been a learning opportunity for everyone, not least Justin. Nick the Express now, and no more numerical fat-shaming at the bingo.
Yeah, woke Brits, the worst kind of Brits, really. Woke Brits want to ban classic bingo callers. They say it's offensive and outdated. So it's the two fat ladies call, which is it's been... So 24% of people said it should be scrapped. And if you look into the numbers, you really break it down. It's young people, people who identify as their gender as other, Southerners and women. That's basically the problem. If you look at the stats, that's how it breaks down. Northern older men still want it.
And the people who describe their gender as other are some of the biggest bingo players.
Yeah.
It'll destroy that market.
That's true.
My nan used to take me to the bingo. I loved it. And what I didn't realise about the bingo is it is actually a more skillful game than you realise because you improve the odds when you're monitoring like half a dozen sheets at the same time.
Yeah, it's a game.
It's proper fun birthday night out.
Yeah, you've got to keep it. It's a lot more fun than greyhound racing.
It's the thinking man's chess. But what I love about this story as well is it's exactly what GB News haters think we talk about. Woke people ruining bingo. Like a hardcore Ramona gives us a chance one night. Oh, I hate the mainstream media. Then we're talking about woke bingo. It just turns off again.
88 is also. I've had at least two good tweets off the back of it. Where Lucian Freud died at 88. Two fat ladies. His last two fat ladies. That was quite. You know about Lucian Freud?
The painter.
He always paints big fat ladies. So he died at 88.
That's an extraordinarily obscure joke, but I kind of got it when you explained it.
Just like all the best jokes.
Yeah. 1 in 3 Londoners found acceptable.
Is also,
only 1 in 10 in Newcastle.
Hitler, isn't it? You know that in Nazi propaganda in the what do you call it, the American
You better be
alt-right.
careful with that gesture, Simon. Trudeau will be inviting you to Parliament.
I think 88 and... Is it 1488?
There's his birthdays.
Well, the 14 is the 14 words of some, like, white supremacists, building a land for white heroes or something, and 88 is just Heil Hitler.
Did you see that funny thing about that TV show on... Is it Comedy Central? And they had... this guy, and it was all about woodwork or something. And they had this guy, and he had the tattoo. He had 88. And these are like codes. And they had to cancel the whole show.
That's right.
And he was saying, and all the production staff were like, "No, it's just a coincidence. It's whatever." And then more and more organisations coming forward going, "This is proper, proper nonsense."
Just a bingo fan.
So maybe we can do that at bingo. Get rid of two fat ladies and bring in Heil Hitler.
Well, you have fun with that.
Metro now. I think this will be the last one of the night. The perfect age to marry if you want to avoid divorce. I would assume that's never, right?
Oh, no, come on, you're a happily married man. This is the perfect age to get married. I thought they were talking like this is the perfect age as in the age that we are living in now. But what they're actually talking about is your late 20s to early 30s. That results in the least amount of divorce. I
would think that's going to depend slightly on the man or female, right? I still think, I may be biased, but I think it is quite good for the man to be a little bit older because they just mature a bit later and everything
my wife's a bit older.
That way. Oh, really?
But mature, younger, mentally.
OK, but yeah.
The whole balance is that.
I like the idea because I'm older, but yeah, I mean, no-fault divorce is a massive problem. There's been a debate raging on X between Pearl and Matt Walsh, and she's basically saying it's mad for men to get married. 75% of a divorce is initiated by women. You have no-fault divorce. They take the kids. Men are 8 times more likely to commit suicide following a divorce.
Yeah.
So, but then other people like Matt Walsh are saying, but my marriage is great, which seems to me a bit of an appeal to authority. But
I don't know if you know our friend Jeff Norcott was on the telly this afternoon as well talking about male suicide and was it was appalling the way that the whataboutery emerged from the other female guest.
Really? Yeah. Well, no one cares about men. And this no-fault divorce thing is absurd. A divorce lawyer here is saying, the focus is on the individual's autonomy, and that's marriage forgoes autonomy. That's the whole point of it. So, I
agree. If you're not willing to forego that, it's not going to work.
It's great for people to get married, but it's very challenging with the current stats. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely correct. Well, that is all we have time for. The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. We have the Daily Mail. Suella, Channel migrants are not refugees. And Posh Spice has been working out. The Guardian, shocking state of prisons means 1 in 10 should be closed down. The Eye have Labour to hit private schools with 20% VAT in the first year of winning power. So make alternative plans now. The Financial Times, scrapping HS2 will hurt trust in the UK, warn Birmingham City's US owners. The Times, PM alarmed by runaway cost of HS2. Russell Brand alarmed also. The Daily Star, rampant rabbits. They need putting down by the RSPCA. Those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. I will be back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Leo Kearse and Francis Foster. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, good night.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Today's showers ease overnight, clear spells to come, but further rain arrives during Tuesday. Some of that, once again, will be heavy with a strong breeze, but nothing compared to Agnes. Storm Agnes, named by the Met Office because of the risk of widespread disruption into Wednesday as that arrives. Before that, it will be a breezy night, but nothing out the ordinary, some clear spells, and the lightest winds will be towards the east and south of England. That's where we'll see some mist patches form by dawn. But patchy cloud elsewhere, and that breeze will keep temperatures in the double figures in many spots. First thing, we've got some showers moving into central southern England. They push into the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast by mid-morning. Perhaps the odd rumble of thunder associated with these. We've got a spell of more persistent rain moving through Northern Ireland into much of Scotland. To the south of that, showers into Wales and the southwest, but in between the showers, some sunshine, and the sun comes out once again in the southeast with temperatures here of 23 Celsius. Average temperatures towards the northwest, where it will stay windy with the risk of gales in the far north. Those winds ease by the start of Wednesday with some early morning sunshine for many. But Storm Agnes is winding itself up in the Atlantic, and that's going to bring a spell of wet and windy weather during Wednesday afternoon and evening. Risk of widespread gales, especially around Irish Sea coasts, where there's the chance of significant disruption on Wednesday afternoon and evening.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And a very good evening. Welcome to Farage on GB News. But as you can see, Nigel's not here. No, he's having a well-earned break. He's out fishing. We'll be talking about that a bit later. But I'm in charge all week, and we have got an action-packed, full-on show. First of all, we're going to be talking about Lampedusa with Mark White. The implications, what's really going on? What does this look like over the next 6 to 12 months? HS2, frankly, is it time for the whole thing to be derailed? And my favourite topic, net zero. We've got a great guest, John Caldwell, to talk about that because the polls show that actually the Prime Minister may be onto a thing. All of that to come, but first up, it's the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Richard, thank you. The top story this hour, the Metropolitan Police has launched an investigation after receiving a number of sex offence allegations against the comedian Russell Brand. The force says the cases aren't recent and no arrests have been made. It follows an investigation by Channel 4's Dispatches, The Times and Sunday Times. The comedian denies all the accusations against him made by 4 women. Also in the news, thousands of passengers could have their flights cancelled or delayed after London Gatwick Airport introduced a temporary limit on flights. It's after an outbreak of coronavirus among air traffic control staff. There'll be a limit of 800 flights a day until Sunday, which includes both departure and arrival flights. The army, which was on standby to help the Metropolitan Police, has now been stood down. It's after a significant number of counter-terrorism firearm officers stepped back from their duties after a colleague was charged with murder over the shooting of Chris Cabba in South London last year. The force says enough officers have now returned to armed duties to meet its counter-terrorism responsibilities without military help. The Greater Manchester Mayor says the North shouldn't have to pay for the government's mismanagement of HS2. Rishi Sunak is refusing to guarantee that Manchester will connect with HS2, with a decision expected to be announced before the Tory party conference next week. Now, the Home Secretary is due to call for unity amongst Western leaders tomorrow to combat global migration. Visiting the United States, Suella Braverman will tell an audience in Washington that other countries may have something to learn from the UK's innovative approach to migration. She's questioning whether legal frameworks designed more than 50 years ago are still fit for purpose. 1 million NHS appointments have been cancelled since December because of strikes in England. Last week's industrial action by junior doctors and consultants means the country's reached the milestone. Another double strike is scheduled for next week. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, has labelled it grim and says medics have received a fair and reasonable pay offer. And finally, a space capsule carrying soil from the surface of an asteroid has smashed down to Earth and been recovered by NASA. The sample was collected by Osiris Rex before making the 1.2 billion-mile journey back to Earth. It was parachuted through the Earth's atmosphere and it landed in the desert in Utah in the United States. Scientists are hoping the sample inside may shed light on the formation of our solar system and even perhaps the origin of life on Earth. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on your digital radio, and now on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's